Patch 1.1 for Diablo 4 caused a lot of anger and frustration within the community, and the devs over at Blizzard have responded in an emergency campfire chat that took place this afternoon. What did they say? What are the changes they're going to be making? You're going to have to find out. Welcome everybody. If you do not know who I am, my name is Alec the Cleric. I'm a Borderlands, Wonderlands, and Diablo content creator, a YouTube editor, and an all-around funny dad who has no idea what he's doing when he plays games. But we have a great time anyway. And today I'm making this quick recap video just to give you the too long did not read version of the campfire chat that took place today with the Diablo 4 devs regarding patch 1.1, the anger that came from the community in regards to this patch, and what they plan to do going forward to make sure that we do not have a situation like this again. Before we get into the real meat of the video though, I just want to take a moment to thank all of my wonderful Patreons over at patreon.com/AlecTheCleric. You guys are amazing, you keep the lights on here, and you keep this dream alive. If you might be interested in supporting this channel and what I do, head on over to patreon.com/AlecTheCleric, take a look at some of those tiers, pick out some amazing rewards for yourself, and get involved there. You can also support the channel by maybe dropping a subscribe. It's 100% free for you, and it helps this channel to continue to grow. Alright, enough with that boring stuff, let's get right into the nitty gritty. So today is July the 21st, 2023, and just a couple of days ago, the devs over at Diablo 4 dropped the first major patch for the game, patch 1.1. This patch was chock full of things. It's probably one of the deepest and most involved patches for a game I think I've ever seen. However, it caused a lot of anger and drama within the community. The biggest piece of anger revolved around the changes made to critical strike damage and vulnerability damage, as well as changes made to damage reduction. As you can see here, critical strike damage was slashed completely across the board in just about every area, as well as vulnerable damage being sliced by a whopping 40%. Damage reduction was also changed to make players a little bit less tanky, and this caused quite the stir. A lot of people within the community were saying that the game was now completely unplayable and dead because of this, and these builds that they have been sculpting and working on forever are now completely dead on arrival, especially within the Sorcerer class. Sorcerer is kind of a glass cannon type class to begin with, which means it doesn't survive very well, but it outputs a ton of damage. With these changes, Sorcerer suddenly wasn't so good at putting out damage anymore, and they still definitely weren't very good at surviving, which changed them from a glass cannon into simply a glass. Now, understandably, this would make a lot of people very upset, although in my opinion, probably overreacted a little bit too much. More on that in another video. But the dev team over at Blizzard surprised us all by launching a kind of short notice campfire chat today. These campfire chats are live streams where the devs come on and they basically talk about their thought process behind what they put into the game. Given the community outrage over patch 1.1, they felt it was really important to come on and talk about why they made these changes. And simply put, they were just trying to make the game a little bit more balanced. The changes that they made to vulnerable damage and crit damage were supposed to make it so that you didn't have to have these things anymore when you went into the game. Currently, most if not all of the top builds require you to deal at least a certain amount of vulnerability damage or crit damage in order to be successful at all. However, since these skills and these abilities were already overtuned to begin with, you had players doing millions, billions, and in one case, quintillions of damage to the point where it literally broke the game. This is what they were trying to fix with this patch, and they admitted they got a little heavy-handed with it. They didn't intend Sorcerer to become a quote-unquote unplayable class, nor did they want to destroy min-maxers everywhere's hard work over the past month. All they wanted to do was balance things out a little bit, as they knew the new Malignant Heart system was coming into the game that was going to change builds drastically. And if vulnerability damage and crit damage was allowed to stay where it was at, well, we'd have a pretty overpowered and, let's face it, boring meta going forward. They said that the key process for improvement for future patches will be just to allow certain builds to be overpowered until they can come up with a much more comprehensive update that will give players something else to be excited and enticed over. In other words, if they get to the point where they have to nerf something like this again, they won't. They will take the time to look at it, maybe make fine-tune adjustments instead of swinging wildly with the nerf hammer, and at the same time drastically improve something else, so that way min-maxers and people that really want to feel overpowered in these games have something that they can look forward to. I think that this was a brilliant way to approach this. They're not walking it back. They're not saying, yeah, we screwed up, let's put vulnerable damage and crit damage back to where it was. They calmly explain that, for this game to survive a long time, we're gonna have to balance things. But at the same time, they don't want to take away the power trip and the power fantasy that these games are supposed to provide. So, they will be a little bit more transparent in the future, as well as make sure that there is something for these players that want to be on this power trip to get just as excited about if their previous build gets a little bit tuned. But that's not all that they came out and said. They also came out and said that really, patches are not going to be handled this way ever again going forward. Instead, they will give us more comprehensive patch notes leading up to the date of the patch, and time to process and adjust our builds and adjust our strategies, so that way we know what's going to happen before it's suddenly dropped into our laps. On top of all that, the devs also gave us some really exciting things to look forward to. They promised yet another Campfire Chat coming next Friday, and right after that Campfire Chat, there is going to be yet another patch, patch 1.1.1. In this patch, they are going to do some adjusting to both the Sorcerer classes and the Barbarian classes, two classes that were hurt pretty hard by this nerf. This will allow those classes to be more on par with some of the other more powerful things that are going on in the current season, so that way they can be played without it feeling like a challenge. They are also making some improvements to Nightmare Dungeons. Currently, the devs recognize that Nightmare Dungeons are being used to level players up more than just being in-game content. That really wasn't the intention of Nightmare Dungeons from day one. These were supposed to be some of the more challenging aspects of the game, but instead they've become the most efficient way to level your character. They're going to make Nightmare Dungeons a little bit easier to handle, as well as increase the monster density in these dungeons, so that way you're able to grind XP a lot faster. They're going to be making specific XP rewards increased, with the goal of expediting the process of leveling characters from 50 to 100. They've also promised new in-game content, which we didn't get any further details about, that will expand upon Uber Lilith and the Tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons. So we're going to have even more things to work towards, instead of just looking at running dungeons over and over again. One of the other big things that people were complaining about in patch 1.1 is that it didn't really do much to address some of the quality of life issues that are in the game, i.e. your stash. If any of you have played Diablo 4, you know that you spend a lot of time filling your stash, going back to a city that has your personal stash in it, putting items away, getting items out, going back into the field, filling your bag, and repeating this process over and over and over again. They realize that this makes the game even more repetitive and honestly unfun. In the very next patch, they are going to be adding an additional stash tab, and elixir sack sizes are going to increase to 99 across the board. As soon as the next patch, we are getting a really majorly awesome, good new change. This is going to really alleviate a lot of that stash issue that has been plaguing players over the course of this month that Diablo 4 has been out. and I think it's going to be a wonderful improvement. All in all, I was very encouraged by this campfire chat. The devs seem to have heard a lot of the players loud and clear, and while they aren't walking back the changes that they made, as those were for the long-term health of the game, they are listening. They are taking that feedback. They are looking at the way that this patch was handled, and they are going to try to improve on that later on with further patches. So that was kind of the long and short of what was talked about today. If you would like to see the entire thing in its full presentation, I will put a link for that down in the description below this video. After you give it a watch, come back and let me know, what do you think about this campfire chat? Do you think the devs have our best interests in mind? Do you think that these changes going forward are going to make the game better? Or do you just want your Quintillion Sorcerer back? You don't want the Quintillion Sorcerer back. But more on that in another video. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and leave a like on the video, hit subscribe, and tap that little bell icon so that you know each and every time I post a brand new video on this channel. There's going to be a lot of Diablo 4 content on this channel, so make sure you follow along. Once again, a huge shout out and a huge thank you to my wonderful patrons over at patreon.com/AlecTheCleric. You guys are awesome. I really love you. Kisses. I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. Until next time, be excellent to each other. And I'll see you then. Take care.